What is going on here is a globally organized, throughout the Muslim world, plan to finish the job that Hitler started. And unlike the Nazis, who hid their final solution, the Muslim radicals shouted from the rooftops.
To combat this evil, the David Horowitz Freedom Center has launched a campaign on American college campuses. Its purpose is to confront the Israel apartheid weeks and the hate groups behind it. The center has created a Palestinian wall of lies to refute the blatant falsehoods of Israel Apartheid Week and to expose the genocidal agendas of the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, and of the Muslim Students Association. The hour is late, and we need your help.
Welcome back to Live at 9. There was a very chilling video there about the rise of anti-Semitism and anti-Israeli incitement at university campuses in America. But Benjamin, my first question to you really, we've seen that in the States, but what is the situation? I'll ask this of both of you actually. What's the situation facing Israeli students and Jewish students on our campuses at universities?
Gili, you have more experience in campuses.
Yeah, the video you've just shown is very chilling, and I will never stop being shocked. I've been facing this for quite some years now, and even now I'm shocked when I see it. As I mentioned earlier, I was a student here until recently. I've spent the past 7 years in Europe studying, and I was a witness to the situation getting worse and worse by the day. And this situation is obviously not very positive. Israel and the Jews seem to be a fair target. There's no other group or other state that gets the same treatment like Israel and the Jews, and that goes unchallenged. I particularly remember a specific time at Cambridge University where I studied for my master's in politics. I came back to my college, Darwin College. It was during the operation, Israel's operation in Gaza against Hamas. And I remember coming back to campus shaken after witnessing a very heated anti-Israel demonstration. And I've never seen, coming from Israel, I was supposed to be tough by then, but I've never seen anything like that. I've seen people from the left, environmentalists, gay groups, Islamists, everyone together against Israel. And it was full of hate. And I remember coming back shaken from that experience and telling that to my friends at Cambridge, to my colleagues. And they said, "So what did you do? Did you cover your face in shame?" So that was their first reaction. It was expected for me, almost by default, to apologize, that I was Israeli and that I supported Israel and I supported its right to defend itself. And that's a very common phenomenon, unfortunately. It happens again and again, and you're constantly on the defense. So that's very unfortunate. And the most dangerous thing about it is that it happens in a very, so to speak, sophisticated way that manages to be very attractive to students here at universities. The anti-Israel campaign has become very attractive to students. It has managed to hijack the human rights agenda. And when events such as Celebrate Palestine or Israel Apartheid Week have kite-making workshops or poetry and food stalls, it looks very attractive and it looks very kind, but it's not. When you have manipulative speakers who throw into the air terms such as fascism, ethnic cleansing, even Nazism at times. And this is actually more dangerous than being directly anti-Israel or full of hatred. This is done in a very sophisticated way, which is much more dangerous than what we've been used to.
And Benjamin, I mean, what are your experiences of feeling this anti-Israeli sentiment and anti-Semitism here in Britain?
Well, the first experience I ever had with Britain was visiting here in '99, going into a corner shop to ask for directions, and actually having a pleasant conversation with the salesperson over there, until he asked me where I was from, and I responded Israel. And then he became straight-faced, said, "Sorry, sir, you would have to leave the shop now." Oh. Actually, he actually stumbled and said, "That means you're Jew. Sorry, sir, would you leave the shop now?" So that was my first experience in the UK. I don't hold it against the British crowd in general, because I find this country to be very tolerant. But I want to add my experience to Gili's. I actually went to participate. I was a student in King's College. I went to participate in a pro-Israeli event in SOAS. And while I was waiting for that event, there was an event going in the student room. And it was Save Gaza event, something, people coming back from Gaza with their experiences, and it was hip, it was fun, it was great. Nobody was talking about the fact that they were helping one of the most hideous regimes in the world. They were not talking about the fact that the government that they were now trying to help is a government which is dedicated to death and destruction, to genocide. That wasn't talked about, but it was a fun event with great atmosphere where the poison actually goes subconsciously into the minds of the people. And that's why I don't necessarily think that each person member of those organizations knows that he's essentially a secret anti-Semite. But they are.
I mean, I discussed earlier in the program, I started the program, Benjamin, talking about the deep-rooted historical anti-Semitism that's been very prevalent in British society over the centuries. Even up until the 20th century, where we've actually witnessed the British government then blocking Jewish immigration to the Mandate of Palestine that could have saved millions of Jews from the hands of the Nazis that wouldn't have died in the Shoah and the Holocaust. But we seem to have, since the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, it seems that we've moved away from the more traditional form of anti-Semitism, which is, the evil, conniving Jewish caricature, the Shylock character, more towards anti-Semitism on international level, where Israel faces discrimination and delegitimization. Can you explain why Britain has become a centre for this anti-Israeli sentiment?
Well, Britain, this type of anti-Semitism you described is sometimes called the new anti-Semitism, and it is it can be defined as discriminating against Jews not as individuals, not even against as a faith, but as a nation. And you would hear people saying, yes, of course everybody deserves their own state, of course the Palestinians and the Sudanese and every nation deserve, but not the Jews. They don't deserve a state. You'll find all kind of grouping Jews together and denying them not individually of the rights, but as a group denying them of the right and dubbing them together. That's prevalent very much in the UK, mostly because I think the UK actually didn't go through the Holocaust, where other European nations have seen the Holocaust with their own eyes. The British haven't, and therefore they were more susceptible to that subtle anti-Semitism disguised as legitimate criticism of Israel being injected into the system through the media, through the politics. It's true there was very much undercurrent anti-Semitism through the 40s. It is actually appalling to see how much you will find it in books. You'll find it even in politics, in private diaries of high officials in politics. But it only broke out when this new form of anti-Semitism, denying the Jews as a group, not as individuals of the right, demonizing the Jewish people, not the individuals, through Israel, made it okay to be anti-Semite, and it's now growing stronger and stronger. it takes only a little bit to scratch the surface to see the good old-fashioned anti-Semitism underneath it.
And Gilly, when I was at university, which feels like a long time ago now, back in the mid-90s, from about 95 to 98, I went to the University of Manchester, and my course was modern Middle Eastern history, so I was in a very pro-Arab department at university. And I remember spending like an amazing 3 months of my life in Israel. It was the best time of my life, with the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, learning Ivrit and learning about Israel. And it was just so amazing. And then to come back to grey Manchester in October was depressing. But I was very much involved with JSOC, the Jewish Union and campaign. And when I came back, it was the tunnel incident where Netanyahu opened up the Hezekiah tunnel, which sparked a Palestinian mini uprising then. And the Islamic Society wanted to ban the Jewish Society for its association with Israel. So it was a big campaign as well. But it seems like the situation at our universities has got far worse now, over, I don't know, 15 years on. The fact that Jewish students now feel fearful at university, even some attacks against Jewish and Israeli students. Can you tell us what it's like for Jewish and Israeli students in particular?
Absolutely. And I agree with you that the situation seems to be worsening by the day. It seems as if there's no supervision whatsoever, or actually worse, very biased supervision of which events can be held at British universities. For example, when London School of Economics invites a person such as Barry Atwan from the newspaper Al-Quds Al-Arab, because he's supposedly a commentator, which is a problem in itself, on the BBC, in the name of freedom of speech, who refers to people in the crowd as Nazis, as murderers of Palestinians. During the event, people walk out in tears. Cool. You can imagine how it feels like, and the rest of the crowd is jeering. Yeah. Now, at the same time, if you have this freedom of speech, you don't have the freedom of speech when the German society wants to invite a person called Thilo Sarrazin based on the assumption that he's an anti-Semite, because it's very useful to use the term anti-Semite when he comes to speak. He actually is not an anti-Semite. You can debate whether he's right or wrong, but he's definitely not an anti-Semite. So obviously you can imagine that creates fear and makes a lot of Jewish students and Israeli students to shy away from such events, from conflict, from standing up. And some of them, I dare to say, are actually sucked into the narrative of the other side because it's very appealing. And when you lack the knowledge and the confidence, you start to doubt your own ideas in many instances. And I've seen that a lot. So we're definitely losing the battles at universities.
But Gilly, maybe you can also explain and go on a bit further. I mean, there's been a boycott against Israeli lecturers and against universities as well. And yet Israel is leading